Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Keynes, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe. My name's Ed Mann, and today we're very lucky to be joined yet again by Joe Watkins. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good. Hi, everyone.
It seems like ages since we last spoke. I think it was like last September or something.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Your audio sounded a lot better now. Have you got a new mic?
Yes, I do have a new mic.
Very nice. Can you care to, what's the specs on this mic? Is this a Yeti? Is this a...
Oh, I don't know. It was quite expensive. It's one of them big ones.
Oh, very well. It definitely sounds different. I like it. So, what makes you bring it with the new mic? Are you venturing into like screencasting or your own podcasting? What's going on there?
Well, I do a fair amount of podcasting and screencasting now, and just thought I'd treat myself to a decent mic.
Well, I can't blame you there, no. And it just definitely sounds a lot nicer. So brilliant. So, how are things going though, man? What have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, I've moved house. And,
that's always a stressful thing. Still on the Isle of Wight?
Yeah, I'm still on the Isle of Wight. But yeah, I moved house in November, and just been plodding along really, doing the same stuff. Few new bits have come up, new ideas for RFCs and extensions and things.
Brilliant. And in your day job, have you been up to much there?
No, we're just still plodding along. We're still working on getting everything running on PHP 7, and we got a few apps running on it now.
How's that going, the transition?
Yeah, we got a few. There's lots of applications within the company, and each team's got many applications as well. And it's only our team that are trying to go for PHP 7 at the moment, and a few of our minor applications are already deployed on PHP 7, but not our main big ones. So,
because I know you work with a lot of legacy apps, so I'm just wondering, how's that going then? The transition to PHP 7?
Yeah,
is it quite a slow?
It's the legacy one that's difficult. Like the little there's like microservices and appies and things, and they're like self-contained packages.
Yeah.
And written using modern standards, and so they weren't really a problem. But it's the legacy code that's taking time.
Causing all the pain. How are you kind of going around doing it then? Are you have you even started looking at the legacy code, kind of moving it across?
Yeah.
Or?
Oh yeah, I mean we can get through about 80% of our test suite at the moment, and then PHP crashes. So we just slowly make it. I mean, at the start, it was literally about 20%. So
it's a really good percentage boost there, though. So you've definitely been working. I mean, what are the kind of things then that are causing the issues? It's
basically because the legacy code base uses uopz to hack the environment, and uopz is just not stable yet, and so we've looked for other alternatives and tried to refactor code in that, but it's just a slow process. And
so is this uopz in the test environment as opposed to development?
Yeah.
So how is uopz going then? So you said that it's not actually production ready, kind of it's still in the works.
Yeah,
what's going on there then?
It's still not. There's minor problems with when you override internal functions with user functions and things like that, and it's all just a bit fiddly. And I'm not really sure. I keep asking Nikita if it's sound and it's going to work, and he's like, yeah, it's sound, do this and do that. But no one's actually tested doing them things yet, and I'm pretty sure there are bugs somewhere. It's just that I'm not certain of where they are, and
trying to hunt them down.
Yeah, every time I change something, they seem to move, and that tells me that I'm not really done yet. It's not really.
It's not the exact kind of place. And so what are these bugs? Is this talking about where you were talking to Nikita about working out if it's possible to do what you used to be able to do in PHP 5? Yeah. Yeah,
because obviously there's changes to the engine where it does various things differently, and see when Zen don't really care about extensions. They it's designed now to go as fast as possible, and if extensions are loaded and they set certain hooks, it will generate different opcodes. Obviously, there's no code internally that results in that happening. It's only extensions that do that. So it's just a case of there might be errors in the logic of how that works, or.
So you say that Zen then, because obviously with Zen, and it was the next gen branch and everything that came across, and it was all these changes. Was that so? They kind of because was it a lot easier than the PHP 5 days to include extensions, create extensions and stuff, or is it just because it's the unknown now? PHP 7?
It's just because it's the unknown,
because of how much it's changed.
Because of how much has changed, and basically just how much has changed. So it's just I like working on uopz, but I can't do it like 24 hours a day. Do you know what I mean? I've got to find other things. And I keep coming back to it, and then we make a little leap forward, and then I go back to it again, and we make another leap forward, and in between I'm doing other things.
And then so with uopz then is the kind of problem that uopz is trying to solve, like some of the areas, is that affecting other extensions you're finding, like from other people, or is it really much a uopz kind of problem the problem that uopz is trying to solve is obviously harder now in PHP 7, and it's not hitting anyone else's?
Yeah, no, it's not other extensions. It's uopz itself. It's actually the way it manipulates the engine that is actually causing the problem, or problems. So yeah, it's no one else. All the other extensions for PHP 7 are getting quite stable now.
And like, because you've got P threads and things like that, are they all kind of going well?
Yeah, and Xdebug and all the other extensions people actually use are getting quite stable.
So are you finding maybe you're going to have to go a different route in doing this, or do you feel you just have to take some time to kind of find out where exactly these things need to be?
We have done that in some cases where we can, but there's just some cases where we can't, and as much effort as it is to make uopz work, it's more effort to change the code. Yeah. So it just
it's that kind of balance, isn't it, of working out what you want to do. Like, as you say, I mean, because like the code, so what the problems that you were kind of trying to solve with uopz in your current code base at your work was like the whole idea of like exiting in scripts causing issues with PHP unit and things like that, wasn't it? Like those were kind of
and code that legacy code that you can't pick apart well enough to unit test, so you have to like
kind of inject mocks as opposed to the design of it.
You have to override because you can't test the unit in isolation, so you have to test like a whole bundle at once, and the whole bundle's calling like internal functions and other user functions, and it's just a whole big mess.
And you have to set up this environment as opposed to the design kind of aiding, making that easier. But I mean, that's an interesting thing you say there, though, with that, because is it only the legacy app then that's having these issues, and obviously the new stuff you don't need uopz for because of...
Yeah. Because, I mean, that should be the aim. It's a thing that you should use as a tool while you're refactoring, but the aim should be to write code that you don't need to hack the engine to test it. That should be the aim.
That's awesome. And so following on from like uopz and things, is there any other projects you've kind of been interested in, started doing and stuff like that in the PHP 7 landscape?
It's not my extension, but there's a DataStructures extension written by a lad named Rudi.
Because I noticed that there was a blog post that you wrote, and it was a really interesting one called Chasing the Dragon. I think Chasing the Dragon was the name or something like that. That you were discussing kind of, how you can't code like as you used to, and that it's nice to kind of help mentor people. And Rudi was one of these guys that wanted and was really eager. He's got an idea, and you helped him out, and you got real value and like some really positive like feedback from doing that.
Yeah, I decided to start putting more time into sort of helping other people because, like I said in the blog post, I'm not getting old. I mean, I'm only 30. It's just
we've got other things. You've got your kids to think of, all these things, and other bits in life.
I can't sit at the computer for 16 hours a day anymore, and I find I'm not getting the same kind of sense of achievement out of my job as I was 5 or 10 years ago, because I could stay up all night and days in a row. and I can't do that anymore, and I don't get the same kind of buzz from it. And so I started thinking about helping other people who have got an interest in kind of PHP internals and extensions and stuff and C. And a few people came forward, and Rudi was the first one. Yeah, it worked out really well. I mean, I didn't actually do any of the programming for the thing. I did a little bit, but he did all of it, designed the whole thing, and we just consulted on Skype and in chat rooms and via email and issues and
that's awesome.
Things like that.
Yeah, because when I noticed it came out, like it was all over Hacker News and things, and I was looking through it, and I thought this isn't a great project. And then obviously I know that you I saw your name, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Did you make it? And then you obviously this blog post came out that you wrote about kind of your help mentor, and I think it's a really good thing. It's a lot of value in helping other people, isn't it? Are you finding you're getting quite a good buzz out of that?
Yeah, because like in a day, I can help 4 or 5 people do different things, and I can't do all them things myself. And so, at the end of a week, when you've helped 4 or 5 people get much further than they would have done on their own, that's a sense of achievement that you
really
can't.
Really good, yeah. Really good sense of achievement.
Yeah.
And then would you mind kind of explaining what this data structures library is then for PHP 7 and how it's kind of, I suppose, because it's only for PHP 7, I'm assuming that there's no kind of there's no need to really push it back to PHP 5. Or is it even possible to push this back to PHP 5, or is it only using things and performance characteristics available in PHP 7?
Well, okay, we'll start at the beginning.
Yep.
Everything in PHP is an array, and not just for you in userland, but everything internally.
It's all an associative array, isn't it? Like hash map. Yeah.
Basically, but the hash map in PHP 7 can act a little bit like several different kinds of, and actually the hash map in Zen can act like several different types of a data structure, but it is a key value hash map.
It's quite a beautiful thing in itself, isn't it? That this can be used in so many different ways, and it's kind of dealing with the kind of generic user.
It is quite clever, but it's not efficient. And in PHP 5 and before, we didn't care about that. And in PHP 7, that's like a proper focus. So when it comes to the question of, well, could we do this for PHP 5? Yeah, we could, but it wouldn't have the same performance characteristics that it does in PHP 7, and it would kind of be a leap backwards for the data structures project. So everything is actually not an array in computer science. There's all kinds of different data structures, and I'm not going to sit and explain them all because you can go and read.
But they all have their own good characteristics, pros, cons to each one of them.
Yeah, and his blog post on it, with all his animations and that, is top notch. Excellent stuff. So read that. I couldn't do a better job of explaining it. But basically, everything is not an array, and there are a lot of cases where you have to compromise, you have to use an array. But if you could, it would be much more efficient to use the suitable data structure for whatever you're doing. So like if you think about a common use case like a queue, where an array is not really designed for that. The way it allocates and releases memory is not designed for that. So that's one time where you might, and that's quite a common thing, and you might want to use a different data for that. So that's what the data structures extension is. It's about introducing objects that are data structures, and they're all final APIs, so you can't like override them like the old SPL data structures and make a huge mess.
See, that's what I was going to mention, because we have had this before, haven't we, with SPL, like kind of these data structures come in.
Yeah, but they're all wrong.
And I think, yeah. And I was just
wondering, actually wrong.
And what was that with the history of that then? So what kind of, were you part, I'm assuming you probably weren't part of that one. No,
I wasn't.
Because they came in and they were kind of trying to aid for that, and I don't know.
I can't actually explain it. I can't explain how that came about. They are wrong. They got really strange inheritance. The hierarchy of the whole extension is just a mess.
And I think that actually, yeah, in his blog post, he does mention that as well. And it's really, as I say, I +1 on that. Definitely recommend checking his blog post, because even if you don't really care about data structures, you're more kind of, you're not into the CS stuff. It's great to just delve in and have a look into this kind of understanding. And like for data structure nerds, it's amazing to kind of see this stuff and then look at the implementations and stuff.
And even for like non-nerds, I mean, the difference between some sets and use an array for the same use case you can't overlook it.
That's it, absolutely. And I suppose the thing is, so within PHP then, so everything is an associative array in that, the typical use case is obviously we have an array, an index-based array where we're just adding to an index-based array, and actually an associative key value array. They're actually the same thing, aren't they, really?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just zero indexed, essentially. Under the hood, it's doing it for you. It's just doing a zero indexed, hash map, essentially. With PHP 7, then, has that changed in that regard, then? Or is it only extensions that can take advantage of things like that?
Basically, yeah, it is, because all the kinds of arrays you create in userland are the same. Now, Opcache or Zen might be able to detect that an array that you've written can be a packed array, which is more like a normal indexed array.
Is it fixed length and things like that?
No, it isn't, but it doesn't use hashing.
Okay.
But you can do that internally, and Opcache can do that when it's saving code and stuff. There could be optimization passes that make some literal arrays like that. But basically, no, it's all the same again. It's all the same still. I mean, the array is much better than it was, and for us internally, it's much better than it was.
I was going to say that, because I remember last time we spoke, obviously the improvements in PHP 7 are the fact that, it's a lot cleaner, like there's not as much dereffing, references and things like that you're having to go through to, go through those hoops to kind of get around in the data structures and the way it's actually memory managed.
Yeah, it is much better, but it's still not a perfect example of all the things it's trying to emulate, and it is trying to emulate many different things. So, that's why the data structures thing seemed like a good idea for targeting PHP 7, because we do care about performance now, and that's going to sort of seep out into the community where people care how fast they're...
That's it, performance, because of obviously these, there's been a lot of benchmarks and a lot of buzz about how performant PHP 7 is, and as you say, like these people are going to start thinking more about that, because of these buzzes, and see, okay, well, how can we itch out more? And then, like, obviously, with them PHP, these data structures, you're not going to port them back to PHP 5, and it's really in PHP 7 you care. And what kind of things from PHP 7 have you used that isn't available in PHP 5, or if any, actually?
Well, no, I mean, it's just the way memory is used in PHP 7 just lends itself better to writing a performant data structure than the way memory was used in PHP 5. So it's just the fact of how actually they work, like at the core of them. And there will be, there's going to be a polyfill, because there's talk of merging the data structures extension into PHP source at some time.
That is awesome. That is just what I was going to ask that later, thinking there's no chance it's going to happen, but that would be amazing. Yeah,
I mean, Rudi's quite keen for it to happen, so it probably will happen. But obviously, by the time it happens, we might be on version 7.2 or 7.3. So there needs to be like a polyfill and a PECL extension as well. So the polyfill, I think, is already done, so that you can just load the pure PHP version if you can't install the extension.
Oh, that's brilliant. And obviously, I mean, in that regard, like the performance advantages aren't as significant as this, but
they'll be crap.
Yeah. I mean, but they probably would be still better than using just an array for everything.
Well, they might not be, but they will be better than, they might be, but they will be better than, the idea will be that if you have to use the polyfill at some point, it's because you're going to deploy to somewhere with the extension, and that would be the main aim. They might not be terrible, but the main thing about the reason the PHP exists is not to be fast; it's just to provide compatibility.
That's it, absolutely. And then so it's actually looking into like the data structures and stuff, like making a concrete API and kind of those characteristics, as you say, like the SPR one kind of hasn't done it right, and they've kind of done some weird inheritance things there, and as I say, definitely read his blog post on that. Like, did he go through with you kind of like how, kind of working out the best APIs for each of the data structures, or did he come with you like the interfaces and things like that, how he wanted to design it?
Not the details of the app. He done all of that. He just asked me how to implement the restrictions that he wanted to put on it, like final and no properties and things like that. So no, he designed all the API himself.
It's a really, really clean, nice design. Like, I mean, it really is. And like the interfaces he provides, like collection sequence hashable, and it works very logically. And it'd be interesting to see like how he got what influence he took from there.
It's not the first version of it he had. There's been like multiple iterations of it, and that was the first one. He thought, yeah, this is
the one he likes.
This is what I was aiming for. Because he is now a C programmer. But he obviously knew C, but he wasn't like he doesn't write it every day kind of thing. Like lots of people have done a bit of C in college and things like that.
That's it. Yeah, they dabbled, but they haven't actually done some real work in it.
And he's a bit like that. And he dabbled since then, and decided he wanted to do PHP stuff, which was lucky for everyone else.
How hard do you reckon it will be, though, for it to be merged into the core? As in, but like kind of like with people, this idea of, now we'd have SPL and we'd have this, or would we remove SPL to have this? I don't know kind of how...
No, I mean, that's not an option. That's removing one thing for another is not an option. I mean, look at what happened. MySQL was deprecated for years before it was removed. They are going to have to exist. They are going to exist in the same place at the same time. I mean, there's no getting around it. I don't think there's really much of an argument against having it in PHP. What probably needs to happen is an RFC to have it merged, and then maybe a version later, another RFC to deprecate the relevant bits of SPL.
And then years later, eventually, hopefully, it'll be able to get removed.
Yeah. It's nice to think that the only bits of SPL that people care about really are iterators, which shouldn't really be part of SPL anyway. They should be part of like Zen core, and data structures and the autoloader. And if he's got the data structures thing going, and I'm supposed to be doing an autoloader patch to move that to Zend so that you can autoload functions and constants and streams and stuff. So then SPL can more or less die.
Actually, saying that then, so you're looking. So are you actually going to be making then the autoloader? Is that something you're working on currently?
Yeah, I've got a patch on the go. Well, it wasn't my idea. It's Anthony's RFC from a long time ago, and he asked me a few months ago if I would. Well, he didn't actually ask me. I offered. He said he was looking at the RFC again, and I said, "Do you want me to do it?" And I have only just got around to starting. But yeah, I have started. So that's probably.
So what's kind of what the features then of that RFC?
Basically, the main aim is, at the moment, autoloading's a bit awkward. You can only autoload classes, which is weird, because there's other things, function. And it means that, because you can only autoload classes, you can't have, people fall into the trap of having static functions inside classes, because you can autoload a class, but you can't autoload the function.
Right. And obviously now, I think 5.6, didn't it bring the fact that you could actually have namespace functions and things like that?
Yeah, but you still can't autoload them. Yeah. So it introduces autoloading for functions and replaces the class autoloader, and it also introduces it for constants and streams. So yeah, and then it takes it out of SPL as well, so it's not a part of an extension anymore.
So hopefully getting rid of that then is in the pipeline. I didn't know if there's any discussion of that, or is it kind of...
There's no actual discussion of that, but I mean in some future version 8, 9, I mean that's probably what's going to be headed towards.
Because was there much work having to be done to move SPL to PHP 7, or was it very much it's its own extension essentially?
No, it's not really. It was done with most of the extensions in the core were done with the next generation patch, so it was already done by the time we knew next generation.
That's it, because I was thinking that would have been the ideal time with the 7 branch being able to be like, oh well, we've also got new data structures, but unfortunately that's not the case.
Yeah, no, I mean we have to deploy a deprecated version of SPL, and we have to deploy it for long enough that it affects everyone. So there's going to be a time when either they both exist, or one of them's in PECL and SPL's deprecated. But I don't really think you can deprecate SPL without putting something in the core to replace it.
That's it, yeah, especially the bits that people need. And I mean, to put it in the core, will your improvements, will there be any performance boosts there, or will it just be a complete kind of port over of what they already have and then additions?
No, it's not really about performance. It's more about just completeness, really. It won't really be faster, but it will be more complete, and that's.
And I mean, like any other RFCs kind of at the moment, I mean, there is one in particular that I wouldn't mind speaking to you about. At the beginning of the year, Anthony proposed a certain COC, and I don't wonder if you don't mind us talking about that. Maybe I don't know whether that's going to be
that's fine.
Trolling and hate and all this stuff. So I suppose for the audience, like who haven't heard about this, and I'm amazed that they haven't. Like, do you mind like maybe explaining what Anthony's proposed like code of conduct was, and like your views on it?
So, anyone that's been to like a conference, I mean, anyone that's got a job has basically signed an agreement or implicitly agreed that they agree that they will behave a certain way while they're in the workplace or whatever, while they're at the conference. And they'll treat it as a professional environment and they'll treat everyone with respect. Now, almost everyone has signed one of these documents, from me down to my 5-year-old children.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your blog post on the topic.
Yeah, well, other people didn't. Everyone signed one, and it's true that everyone says, oh, well, I mean, we're all adults, can't we just behave ourselves? But, well, yes, we should be able to, but it's a matter of fact that people don't. And maybe a code of conduct won't convince those people to behave themselves, but at least you'll have a thing to point at and say, look, these are the rules you're breaking, fix it. That's basically the idea. Only in the original RFC, it went a bit far with wording and a mediation team that would have superpowers and things, and people hated that. They really, really hated that. They rebelled against it really extremely very hard. But when I say people, my view on it is that it doesn't actually affect anyone else.
Because this is a code of conduct not for the PHP community at large, but for the PHP core and PHP internals.
Yeah. And Reddit and Twitter reacted like it was affecting them personally in their job and like at home, and it's not that. It's about people who are internals programmers.
I mean, how many? Because I mean, obviously not the exact number, but like an estimation. How many actual active internals developers are there?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, when there's a really controversial RFC, it might get 80 votes. So there's about that many at the outside edge, that many voters, but not all of them are internals developers, but they still get a vote and vote still counts anyway. So that's about the most I've ever seen. So it really doesn't affect everybody. It only affects us when we're dealing with each other and when we're going out into the community and going to conferences with a PHP badge or, at php.net on our lanyard. It's about how we represent the project, which I think is totally sensible.
As like a business, essentially as like you would a job.
As like a professional, as like just treat everything you do as you would a professional environment. I think that's really sensible. But everyone in like social media reacted like it was actually affecting them. And I tried to write a thing. It was kind of tongue in cheek about my kids signing one of these codes of conduct. I mean, it is true they do sign one, but the response I got was people thought I was calling them stupid 5-year-olds because I said even my kids understand that this is a good thing. We never had to like explain to them. It's obvious, immediately obvious why that's a good thing. You don't even need to explain it to a child, but groups of irrational adults apparently needed explaining to them. And I got.
I mean, what do you think, like the fundamental, because I mean, you mentioned there that, it was some of the kind of the proposed things, around the COC that will cause people like the mediating team and things like that. Were those the areas that people really didn't like, or was it really the whole idea at all of having this idea?
Well, it wasn't, that's not even the worst consequence. The worst consequence is that as a consequence of Anthony putting up that RFC, he got verbally attacked and abused, and he's now walked away from internals. He doesn't want anything to do with it anymore.
And he'd only just come back from the last...
just come back, yeah. But I mean, this time he's serious. I mean, we're barely... last time, I saw him nearly every day, but now, I don't. I see him a couple of times a week. I talk to him online a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
He's got a new job, and he's busy in that, but I mean, he
would always keep his head... Yeah, he would always keep his head in the door, kind of what's going on, but now...
Yeah, now he is out. He said as much. He's out.
And is it because of the reaction from the community then, kind of at this?
Yeah, he was trying to do a good thing, and people reacted, calling him all kinds of names and accusing him of all kinds of things.
I think that you mentioned in the blog post something really interesting. You said that it's an RFC, so it wasn't the be all and end all. It was a starting place.
Yeah, and it was actually a draft as well. So it wasn't even like that's the stages we have a draft and then under discussion. And then it stays under discussion for at least 2 weeks, and then we go into voting if there's a consensus about it.
So, and then this was kind of like completely poo-pooed at the offset, even in draft, that people were like, no, we're not even going to have a discussion. Because, I mean, even if you think maybe some of this was extreme, like the concept of a COC, should still be discussed and it should still be brought up, and, as opposed to, as you say, like, maybe not this exact, it's almost like an implementation. I've got an idea, here's an implementation. Oh, I like the idea, let's think about the idea a bit. But maybe the implementation you've done isn't quite where we want it to be, or you haven't thought about this, but it allows you to start. It's a baseline for working on this.
So that's what it should have been. It should have been a discussion, but it wasn't. It was a lynch mob, and
it's a really sad thing, isn't it, that it kind of has ended up like this.
But Derick has taken over the RFC, and I mean, you can't scare away Derick. It will go. It will.
And for the audience, who is Derick?
He's the author of XDebug. He's super smart, and he's been involved with PHP forever. He's set his mind to it, so it's going to happen. So
what do you feel? What's kind of his view on it? Because obviously, is it different to what Anthony had, or is it very much a kind of boilerplate of what he started, and then I'm just going to carry it on?
No, he very much agrees with the ideas behind it, but he's just trying to find the right wording that people will agree to, and give the right ethos, I suppose, for PHP, give the right impression for us as a project in order to attract more contributors of any kind, internals or whatever, documentation, web or whatever, because those of us that are involved, we're all quite thick-skinned.
Well, you've been around for a while, so you've had to deal with this stuff,
Well, and we forget what a deterrent it is for someone on the outside who sees this going on. We forget what a deterrent that is. A lot of us didn't watch internals. No one cared. Do you know what I mean? But now the whole community's watching because it affects them and so quickly, and so everyone's sort of watching. When I started getting involved, I didn't know about the internals mailing list. I didn't know about any of that, so I sort of jumped in at the deep end. But that was just by chance. Most people now, they are actually watching, and it's totally off-putting to see people calling each other names on a mailing list, and spending many hours writing essays to each other that are basically just aimed at insulting.
And is this part of the reason for having the COC in the first place as well, was the fact that this has occurred, and we want to kind of have a guidelines essentially we can point to and say, look, this is wrong because of this reason, etc.
Yeah, I mean, there are people were disputing that the more extreme things that it tries to tackle, like outright sexism and racism and things like that. People were saying, oh, well, that's never happened. Well, no, okay. But you don't not have a rule against you don't abolish the law against burglary because your house
hasn't been burgled.
So it's not logical to say we don't need it because it's never happened. Obviously, a lot of the minor everyday stuff, that happens all the time. I mean, the conversation always gets too heated, and people are not always, but I mean, often it devolves into a kind of slanging match. And, people accusing each other of not really listening and not really understanding, and kind of passive aggressive comments like that. And that's pointless.
Unconstructive, completely.
Yeah. And we can all see that it's pointless. And
it's devoid of the point of what maybe is actually the subject as well. We're definitely devoid of the project, the subject matter.
And nobody gets on like that at work. I mean, nobody communicates with their work colleagues like that.
Or it will be brought up, and it will be brought up, and you would get to say, exactly, you wouldn't work well in the team. I mean, that's the interesting, so it's essentially trying, because, I've kind of had a look into the COC stuff. I've tried to stay away from it all because it is quite overwhelming. And essentially for me, then it means that what you're trying to do, or what the COC is trying to do, is it's trying to put a group of guidelines in, similar to how you would be in a job, that allows you to, essentially, if there's problems, say, we've said you can't do this, but you have violated that. And when you're, put a PHP badge on, essentially, and be in the PHP community and be in PHP internals, you should act in this certain way.
Yeah, basically, it's just it's as simple as that. But
because the way that I've kind of perceived it is this overarching thing that's going to end the PHP community as a whole, and it's going to. I mean, it's quite amazing. It has become that, from a bystander, that this is how we feel. Like if you look at the Twitterverse, and you're like, wow, okay, well, this is going to end the world, but it's really not. Then it was just a draft that was started. It may have had views that a lot of people didn't agree, or certain people didn't agree that they could have worked on. But it was just a prototype implementation, essentially. But
everyone just stood on the sidelines and shouted into the middle without really listening to anyone else. And
what are your views on it then? Like, what do you feel? I mean, obviously now that Derick's taken it over, like, are you keeping an eye on that and like how he's doing and like what's going on there? I mean, what's changed? And I suppose it's the wording, as you say, things have kind of how to get people.
Basically the wording and the actual document for the code of conduct that was in the initial draft was just copied from somewhere.
Yeah, it was wasn't it the Ruby? There was some controversy around that as well.
It's called the Contributor Covenant one. It's used by quite a few projects, but there is controversy around that, but I don't really understand it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But basically that was copied like verbatim and just put in the RFC.
Again, as like, this is a draft, let's work on it from what works for us.
But it's quite objectionable in a few places, so I think it's just been... We're not home growing our own, but we're sort of using bits of that and bits of what we sort of make up and coming up with our own sort of homegrown-ish one.
And from from the outside looking in, this has no effect on any PHP person who isn't in internals, in that... I mean, people may feel, well, it does because it's going to be the people, it's going to be shaping the structure of the project as it goes along. But for like our day job, it's not going to be affecting us. So it makes people sound like it's going to be affecting us and how we actually are able to program and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's not really going to affect you. And as far as it does may affect you, those effects are positive. I can't see any way that a more organised, more cohesive, more productive internals is bad for anyone. It's illogical to say that. It's illogical to assume that everyone is going to try and use this as a kind of weapon to fight their own agenda. I mean, no one's doing that now. And if they wanted to, they could make their own weapons without this.
Yeah, because you haven't got any weapons yet, have you? In essence, you can make your own. You haven't got any guidelines that are set in stone. You can just...
No, but if you wanted to kick up a fuss about the way people behave, and if you wanted to try and get other people into trouble, you were that kind of there would be people already doing that if that was going to happen, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
Just because there's no bit of paper or no page you can go to and point at, it wouldn't stop someone who's a bad actor. It wouldn't stop someone who just wants to cause trouble, that's the only thing I can see when I read these totally over the top responses to it are assumptions that everyone is going to be acting badly all the time, and that's not the case. This doesn't happen now, so there's no reason to assume it would be any different.
So did you feel at the moment with Derick taking over, like there is a clear roadmap, or do you think it's still very much up in the air?
He's doing it. No, he's getting on with it. Doing it in a repository on GitHub, and he keeps emailing internals and everyone's back and forth, and it's much more civilized now. I mean, it's going to happen. Doesn't matter what people say on Reddit. Derick will just ignore them like he has done for the past 10 or 15 years or whatever.
But then you've unfortunately lost Anthony out of this again because,
I definitely don't think he'll be coming back. He's just totally not interested anymore. Which is so sad. He's one of the best speakers we've got. He's one of the best managers in a way, of people, and it's a huge loss. There's only probably a few people brave enough to start that kind of discussion.
I think that's it as well, because it does take some, a certain type of person, to be able to start that discussion. But as you say, like, because of the retaliation and kind of how it's been, it's ended quite, it's ended terribly, really. Like, in that,
I mean, the people that thought that kicking up a fuss was going to change anything were wrong. I mean, it has ended dreadfully.
But why do they not want it there? What is their reason for being, as you say, is it just because of the fact they feel it's going to be used?
Because people didn't want to feel like that they could be penalised for rules. Like if I'm having a conversation with someone, or someone from PHP is having a conversation with someone on Reddit, that they can't act the way they want to because they're bound by rules that apply to me and not them, or so, I can't think of a rational reason. Right? So I'm only guessing, but I think it's that people like to be arses and they cherish that and
they fight for their freedom to be an arse. Yeah,
and I kind of understand that, and that's fine. But we're not talking about on Reddit and on Twitter and in conversation at work and at home and at a local conference. We're talking about when we go out into the community and we've got not a literal but a PHP jumper on. Do you know what I mean? Like we've got the logo on us and we've got it on our lanyard at php.net. It's about projecting a certain image, and that's perfectly sensible because of not for any of the reasons to do with feelings or anything like that. I mean, I don't have them, but it is about trying to attract
new people to come in. I mean, that's it, you know, because I say, like, if you look at it as a kind of a job, I mean, you really want new interesting people to come along, like like Rudi, like people who are happy to want to work, on this project and feel enthusiastic, and they feel they're going to be, kind of their work they do will be beneficial for the product or project. And it's that, you need these people, you need to recruit these people in.
Yeah.
And, one way of doing that is by
stream of them as well. It has to be like a fresh stream of them all the time because people get busy with real life and work. And
well, that's it. You can't, and it isn't a full-time job for most people. This is this is in their own time, and other things do dictate how much time they can spend on it. So thinking of it as that is like it is almost like trying to promote a good workplace, essentially. In this project, It's crazy. It is insane how it's kind of changed. But I'm glad that, obviously Derick's taken over and that it does look positive that these things are going to be happening.
Oh yeah, they'll happen. I'll be disappointed if all the work gets done on the content and there's a consensus that the content is acceptable and then the vote goes ahead and it gets refused. I'll be disappointed then because what does that say about us if we can't agree to be nice to each other? I mean, it's so basic.
It does kind of come down to that in some regard, doesn't it? And
it has profound effects, but it's actually so simple. Just be nice. And it is that simple, but it has all the profound effects of wanting to bring more people, being able to bring more people in and stop the deterrent of the pointlessly heated conversations. I mean, really pointlessly, arguing about previous versions of PHP and just pointless stuff. I mean, that's not how you would conduct yourself at work or in another academic setting. And so you shouldn't just because you're on the internet and it's PHP. It seems totally reasonable.
Well, I mean, and also, what does Rasmus think of this? Do you know, like, his opinions on these?
He hasn't really said anything, but I mean, he hasn't really said anything that I know that remarkable. He doesn't really. He's one voter.
Yeah, he is exactly. He is as much of a weight as anyone else.
Yeah. And he's good with that, and that's great. But I mean, even if he vehemently disagreed, there wouldn't really be much point in kicking up a fuss because he's one voice. He'll just vote whatever way he like everyone else. But I mean, I can't really see I can't see logical objections to it. So hopefully there won't be any more silly setbacks.
Absolutely, and like then following on from like the RFC chat, like what other is there any other RFCs that tickling your fancy currently in like kind of things you've been voting on, or kind of new ones that have come up?
There's a thing for normalising negative string offset access, which you would assume it's one of them things that I kind of assume would work. I've never used it, but I thought that's how it works.
So it's one of those, like, it seems to should already be in there.
Yeah. So there's that going on. It's kind of a no-brainer. There's no resistance to it. I don't even think I voted because there's absolutely no resistance to it at all because it's like a no-brainer. So, that's the only one that's actually in voting at the moment. There's quite a few in draft, but I don't want to talk about anyone's stuff that's not.
That's it, exactly, because it is just draft. I mean, in discussion, there's quite a few that are quite interesting, like the trailing commas in list syntax. What's your kind of view on that? Do you agree? Do you feel it's fine to be in?
No, I don't really like that.
See, the only thing I can think of with that is that it does make, I mean, in arrays, the one thing I do like about, Git diffs and stuff with that is that you can put it at the end of the array and it doesn't do a diff change on that line. It does make the diffs look nicer. Now, whether it's, I mean, why is it that you can actually do that in arrays currently? Do you know? Like, is there like a fundamental reason for it? Or is it just the fact that it was like unexpected that it was meant to be doing that?
No, it was actually added on purpose so that diffs were sensible. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that you should have so many things in a list that you should need that diff consistency. Really, I don't really agree that you should have that many parameters to a function either.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of code's generated and
because I mean, the only time you're going to actually be using this is if you've got too many parameters that you're going to require that it be on separate lines, that then obviously then having this trailing comma will then warrant, a git diff that looks different.
Yeah, but I think that's a really poxy reason to change away something. Oh, another RFC that went through recently was the list keys one.
Yes.
That was quite a nice one, where the example's really horrible, but it is a fact that most arrays are not indexed arrays, so list isn't all that useful anymore. So being able to support keys just simply makes it useful again for the way that we actually use arrays today. But the example was like a really contrived constructor one, and it was like, well, you shouldn't use it like that. And then people started with the bike shedding them out. We shouldn't have stuff that promotes bad programming. I mean, this is such a stupid thing to say.
I know, because it's not the bad, like that. It's not the feature that's called it. It's the example was contrived, and it was just an example to show off that this could do it. I'm not saying that this is the best way of doing it, but it's an example of showing how it could be used.
You can take any language and any feature in any language and abuse it.
That's it, exactly.
There's no exception to that.
That's it.
You can't say we shouldn't have that because it might be abused, because that's a non-argument, because everything can be abused.
It is amazing how, I mean, it's funny, like, obviously looking into these RFCs and stuff, like, how important, and, the way of the documentation, the way you propose it, the examples that you use, because as I say, all these are going to be, in essence, attacked, which is sad for it, about...
That's what happens every time, but if you don't put examples in there, people go, well, what's the use case?
Exactly, yeah, well, where am I going to use this?
Even if you explain the use case in words like I just did, it's perfectly reasonable, but people won't accept that. They want to see code, and they preferably want to see code from Composer or one of these projects that they actually use, and they want to see you improving something that they actually use, and then they think it's good. But if they can think of a way to write your example code another way, or they think it's bad practice, you get shot down for that. But they're not really arguments against a feature. But people lose sight of what... I suppose the actual problem is that none of us are really qualified to design a language. We're doing it as sort of a group, and we just sort of bumble along and sort of hope that none of our mistakes are so too terribly costly. But none of us are really qualified, and that doesn't really help. It drives every conversation in the same direction with, we want to see use cases and we want to see real world improvements, but that's not what drives the development of other really good languages. They don't need that. They need a technical reason for something to exist, and theory's enough there, and that's, I think, a better way to move forward, a faster way to move forward, and it's a better way to keep on top of what's current.
I mean, have you ever thought about, I mean, I know that Anthony I think he discussed it, like different communities. Like, have you ever thought about moving to another programming language community? I mean, obviously in your day job it's PHP, but moving away from this community into another one, and have you looked at other communities?
No, I haven't, because I can only do one thing well. Do you know what I mean? I could get my fingers into many more pies, and I have dipped them into various projects that are around the web stack, but not another language, because it's the one I use, and there's not much point in like writing brand new stuff for like Rust or whatever when I'm not using that every day. I mean, I look at all those languages. Whenever something new comes along, I'll couple of weekend projects and get used to it, but I don't actually deploy them at the moment, so there's no point in spending time on it. And it's been like that for sort of, well, I mean, for the majority of the last sort of 10 years. I did have a Java project for a long time, but I mean, I don't enjoy it. So yeah, it's just PHP because it's the most productive thing to actually work on. But yeah, I mean, some people that are involved in internals do dabble in the internals of other languages.
Because I mean, there is an argument to say, like, with, you know, obviously this is our daily language, and you get influences from other languages, and you're like, oh, I want to bring it back to this language. But there has to be kind of a divide, a boundary. I know it's not exactly fixed, set in sand what it is, but it is, okay, look, we don't want to become that language, or we don't want that feature. Like, you should just use another language. You know, like, there should be that polyglot approach of like, okay, use the language that's best for the job. Don't just try and include everything in one language. Do you agree with that?
I don't think you should bar anything from happening just on the basis that it exists in another language. I think you've got to be ready to accept whatever people are pushing forward with today. When PHP became popular, it was popular because it was very good at what people were doing at that time. So to stay ahead of the curve, you've got to be ready to accept things that seem foreign and seem like they don't fit with PHP, like a strict type system and things like that. You've got to be ready to accept that, even though it seems foreign.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because as you say, yeah, to keep it relevant and to keep, I mean, that is, say, what fundamentally PHP came from was to do things, and it was working well for the problems that were there. Now these are the problems we have.
Yeah, that's right. And people, en masse have turned to other technology, which is great. I mean, I don't only write in PHP, I write in C and C++ and Java and C# sometimes, but I like to deploy stuff in PHP because it's what I know best. But people have, gone to different, languages, and in a way that's a shame, and it's because we didn't stay ahead of the curve. Because there was this idea that, we don't want to turn into Java, or we don't want to turn into whatever. That's not a concern for me. I hope we take all the best bits of all of those languages and implement them as quickly as possible. I mean, that would be my ideal world. It's just there's not enough people to do that.
Joe, thank you so much again, man, for coming on the show. It's always great, a pleasure to have you on and like to discuss all these things. And okay then, audience, I will speak to you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.